Okay, hi and welcome everybody. This is the Hobo Prepper and I am Friar Tuck. Hey, I have something that is a reward for all of you subscribers. For all my 280 plus subscribers, I want to say thank you for subscribing to my channel. And today is a treat for you. See, one of the great things about being on a bike tour is that you can stop in different cities and see different things. And when I got here to St. Augustine, or actually St. Augustine Beach, I got to hear a lot of the local history and I thought, oh wow, this is absolutely interesting. I think that you guys would absolutely love to see it. So stay tuned and you're gonna get to see all the great things about St. Augustine, and then at the end of the video, I will kind of give you a little bit of a recap of some of the things. But hey guys, thank you for being my subscribers, thank you for being my friend, and thank you for watching. This is for you.
Cathedral Basilica, the Catholic Church, built in 1797. It actually suffered a pretty...
Wow. Look at this artwork. Oh. Thank you, Spanish. Okay guys, here's some interesting piece of Catholic and Christian history. And I'm only aware of this because I tend to date pagans. And one of the pagan ladies that I dated, she told me that back in the day when the Catholic Church was first starting and growing, in order to be able to get the pagans to come join the Christian Church, what they did is they gave them the Virgin Mary. That's why the Catholic Church holds on to the Virgin Mary, because it was part of their deal of bringing the pagans into Christianity and the Catholic Church, because paganism is generally a feminine religion, which is why they have her as their mascot. That's why you have Jesus and the Virgin Mary. So something interesting about Catholic history. And so this was almost the first place that I ever saw that didn't have a tribute to Mother Mary. So I thought that this was interesting and another piece of history to share with you guys. Ponder that one for a while, guys.
How'd you like that?
So this is a whole square dedicated to the original infrastructure of the Catholic Church.
Monument of Father Camps, with the Menorcancy saved from a certain tragic end down in New Smyrna. Look closely at the governor's house here on the left-hand side. That's coquina they used to build it. Coquina, composite, sand and fossilized shell of lime the Spanish quarried out on Anastasia Island to build their permanent structures here in the colony back in the colonial period, like the fort we'll visit in a few more trolley stops. You know, I'm convinced if the Spanish didn't start to use coquina when they did, we'd no longer have a colonial St. Augustine to share with you. Anytime the Spanish used wood or palm logs, it was usually destroyed by enemy attack, fire, or storm damage. Back to the south side of the plaza now, amidst these grand hotels of the Gilded Era. As I mentioned earlier, Henry Franklin purchased this Casa Monica in front of us from Franklin Smith, and when he did, he changed its name to the Hotel Cordova. But then in the 20th century, when the property was purchased, its original name, Casa Monica, was restored, which is only fitting after all, Saint Monica, the mother of St. Augustine. Here on the right-hand side, you see a large opening into the Casa Monica we use for valet parking today, but it was Mr. Flagler who had it widened after he purchased the hotel, so the horses and carriages could pull into the lobby area, and the guests would use the staircase at the far end of the tunnel. Here on the left-hand side on the sidewalk next to the governor's house, there's something you don't see every day, a cement horse trough, with the date 1887 clearly visible. Back to the south side of the plaza, here on the corner to our right, the Trinity Episcopal Parish Church, the oldest Protestant parish in Florida, on its original foundation since 1831. Look for some beautiful stained glass windows here, some by the protege of Tiffany. You'll see some historic storefronts coming into view, but don't miss the opening coming into view on the right-hand side between the two coquina columns. You'll see Amelie Street running south from the plaza. Amelie Street is not just the oldest street in St. Augustine, it's the oldest street in our nation, dating back to 1572. Take a good look. Here it is on the right-hand side, Amelie Street. But on this gorgeous Wednesday morning, who is ready for a... I don't want you to miss a thing, especially the old residential section of town from the colonial period. That house, which dates back to 1702, and right away you might be thinking, wait a minute, bud, 1702 is not old enough for St. Augustine. You know we go back much earlier to 1565, and you are correct. But what happened here in 1700 would change everything for the colony when Colonel Moore, the governor of the Carolinas, one of his many attacks on Spanish Florida, this time he would lay siege to St. Augustine, burning pretty much everything made out of wood. The only thing to survive was the fort, which the Spanish had completed 5 years earlier. Colonel Moore then learned that the Spanish were about to be reinforced from Cuba, so he retreated to the Carolinas, leaving destruction behind. This time the Spanish would rebuild St. Augustine, but not with wood, but as you'll see here on the right and elsewhere, coquina. There it is again. Here's our municipal marina. We have a number of watercraft you can enjoy here on these beautiful weather days out in the bay. There's our pirate ship, the Black Raven. Arr! They put on quite a show, scaring your kids and grandkids half to death. Lots of fun. We also have the schooner, no, the schooner Frida is not back in the water, but Victory 3, that double-decker white cruise ship balcony. Sorry, no elevator, but there are resting platforms and windows on the way up. And the Spanish had their first Franciscan priory. The British would convert to a military barracks and has served a military function ever since. Look for 3 flags up on the balcony level, 2 blue, 1 red, each with stars. Each of these flags represents a different general officer working in the headquarters today. 2 U.S. Air Force, 1 U.S. Army, working with their staffs to protect our freedoms. God bless our troops. Down on Marine Street, easily accessible from my next trolley stop, is originally a 1-story, the Gonzales Alvarez House, 1702. The British, Sergeant Fenwick and his wife Maria, purchased the property, added the 2nd floor, balcony, and other extensions they explain as part of a guided tour you can get here at the Oldest House Museum, which is open from 10 to 5. Certainly don't want to take the balcony off this White House on the corner this time. Charlotte Street is part of your adventure inside the Oldest House Museum. Once we exit the drive...
Look at how these steps are made. These steps are made with very low, it's normal steps are a lot, like twice as high. And see how long they are? This is actually designed so that people could run up the stairs in a fast manner. Old architecture. They were smart back then. Wow, you get complete view of the bay and the island. All of this stuff. You see everything coming in and out. And we got a ship coming through. So it looks like they even had a second line for their cannons. Not just there, but also down here as well. Well defended fort. All this for pirates. How rare is it to see a cannon this old? This cannon's 200 to 300 years old. Still standing, worked for years. Wow. Look at how they had controlled entrances. They have walls, and then they have controlled entrances. And then they have the high ground to be able to defend the fort. This is old battle tactics that have probably been long forgotten, at least by the average man. And now we're leaving the fort through a controlled exit.
That big shiny horse behind us in the back of the parking lot, that horse was made in the early 1980s. Right? On your right. 208 feet tall cross, can't miss it, right? Right by where that cross is at is where the Spanish arrived to form St. Augustine. You'll see the original coffin of Spanish Admiral Don Pedro Menendez de Aviles. We just call him Pedro Menendez. Pedro Menendez. In that building is also restrooms, water fountains, a church, religious gift shop, among other things. If you want to get off here, please wait for the bell, folks. Wait for that bell. The old cemetery. Last burials were in the late 1800s. You can see it from right here. In the middle of that cemetery, that thing that looks like a house, in the middle of the cemetery, that's the oldest Marian shrine in the U.S. That big giant oak tree. Trolley stop number 21 is right here next to him, right under his branches. Here at the BF 1565 Hotel. This is stop 21. That's a pretty old tree, huh?
That's lovely.
Imagine the stories that he will tell if he could speak. If he could speak, right?
The old senator.
Right. Magnolia Avenue. One thing you will not find here are magnolias. Well, there's a couple up ahead. Now, there used to be magnolias going outside the street, but a strong winter got rid of them in the early 1870s. So we got these live oak trees. These trees give the streets its presence of beauty. Yeah. This park is where the Native American village was at, the Timucua village of Chief Surgoy, when the Spanish came here to form St. Augustine. This is where the Indian village was at. In this park was the site of the first Spanish settlements. Because when the Spanish came here and formed St. Augustine, it was right here. It was right next to the Indian village. The Spanish and the Indians lived next to each other. Yep, first two and a half years of St. Augustine. Yep, right here. It was now the Fountain of Youth Archaeological Park. This is where a local story began. This was the first chapter of our nation's colonial history took place. If you want to get up here, please.
And then go back to where we get off. Unless you want to get off, when we get off the phone, we have to pay for another ticket.
Take those tours. I'll drive you all the way around the loop and bring you right back here. Here you can also find Gator Bob's, which has the cleanest and closest bathrooms in all of St. Augustine. They have a real silver bar. Isn't that cool? Now over here on the right hand side you'll see that black cage. Yeah. They used to put prisoners in that who are working out on the chain gang. They would transport them to wherever they needed to be. And they wouldn't have to bring them back to the jail at night because they just make them sleep right there. Looks pretty comfortable protection. Now you might be looking at it and thinking, that's a pretty short wall. Well, people back to the San Domingo Redoubt. Now they had troops stationed there 24/7, and those cutouts are where they kept their cannons. Looks pretty comfy, right? Just like home. Drugstore, and you can get yourself a concoction of spring water, grain alcohol, and opium. Yeah. Yeah. We'll talk a lot about him later. But he is a very influential man for this city. He is responsible for...
All right, guys, I hope you really enjoyed that. I shared a bunch of clips of the tour in which I took. So I want to there was some clips that I lost because I started having issues with my recording software. Now, it is paid software. It's not free software. So I ended up losing about half of my footage. There's some things that I learned that you guys might want to use for yourself. You know, for example, when I went into the fort, I got to talk to some of the guys that were dressed, in the garb that had the hats and the uniforms and everything else like that. Now, I did miss the demonstration with the cannon and the rifles where they would have explained it, but one of the guys actually explained it to me really well. So back in the day, you know, you always see those bayonets. Well, they didn't use them like we use them in today's modern warfare. If you know anything about like cavalry and how they used to do it in the medieval times by putting the spikes up, or I forget what the technical name is, but to be able to keep the cavalry at bay if they were being attacked. It was a way to avoid being flanked. Well, back in the day, it would take about 30 seconds to fire a shot and then load your musket again. And if you had cavalry coming at you, you would fire your musket, you would throw on the bayonet, and then you would put the bayonet forward. The horse would try and come to a complete stop so it didn't impale itself, which would then knock the guy off the horse, and then they would use that for the kill shot. And that was something that I found really interesting, because that's not the way our modern warfare uses bayonets. It's more or less close quarter combat, while you still have your rifle, because you can kind of use it as a stick, and use the butt of the weapon. The other thing that I found really interesting is the clothes in which they wore and the way in which they did it. So because he gets to wear this during the winter and during the summer, he says what they used to use was like linen shirts, and yes, you would sweat in it, but because of the breeze that would come in, it would actually keep you cool, and so it actually made things really good for him. But the wool coats that you would think that would keep him warm, actually, it did, but it didn't. It was hand woven wool, which meant that there were a lot more hairs. You could get a lot more air into it, and it was more or less you would put those on to protect you from the gunpowder and the blowback, because it was fire retardant in the event that you had to work the cannons, and that's really why they wore the coats. And he was explaining to me, because I was like, wow, that should keep you really warm in the winter. He's like, no, you freeze to death in this uniform. That's the reason why you saw these people with cloaks. And I always thought that was just for presentation, or to show your wealth and stuff like that. But this is actually how they used to keep themselves warm. So the uniforms that you see like in the movies with the red coats and stuff like that, that was the coats were used to be able to make sure that that the soldiers didn't catch on fire when they were firing their muskets and their cannons, but it would never keep them warm during the winter. They had to wear some sort of cloak or something over it. Now those guys, they don't. One guy had a cloak. The other guy just says, I just put extra garments on underneath, extra couple of shirts and an extra couple pair of shorts. So this was something that I learned at the fort, and we as a society, we may end up going back there. The other thing that I really hope that you are able to see in this content is that not only is St. Augustine the first European established city in the Americas in 1565, September 8th, 1565, but it was also a religious epicenter, because that is where the Catholic Church made its landing to Catholicize the rest of America. And, the history that goes on behind it and all that. But one of the things that I really thought was interesting is that you can still see it today, the epicenter, because it's almost like it has its own energy to where I don't know how else to explain it. You'd have to experience it yourself. But if you go through this city, whether you're a Christian or not a Christian, this is something that you will definitely notice as you go through the city. That, and it also has the coastal town vibe, which is eating and drinking. And so there's plenty of, if you want to go on this tour, there are plenty of places where you can get off and do free testing, where you can get bourbons and wines and all that stuff. Now, me, I'm not a drinker, so I didn't get off at those stops. Now, one thing I will tell you about St. Augustine that I really liked, especially about this tour, even though it cost $40 for the trolley and all that stuff, it was well worth the money, because man, I had to stop halfway through the day and just be like, I'm exhausted. There's a lot of stuff to do, a lot of stuff to see, a lot of stuff to learn, and it was a lot. And you could spend a good couple of weeks here to several months here just to experience everything there is to experience. And that was one of the things I loved about San Francisco, is like, you could live there your whole life and not do everything, because there's so much to do, not just tourist attractions, but local attractions that tourists don't even know about. And St. Augustine, it's not as great as San Francisco as far as the number of things that you can do, but it is still pretty hefty, especially for a small city like this. And the rich history of it, the military history of it. I mean, it was under 5 different governments, including the United States, Spain, and I think it was England, because before they became the United Kingdom. And plus they have a military base there. This was a fort to be able to fortify. And the reason why the Spanish even showed up is because apparently the French started their own colony in Jacksonville. And then the Spanish king, he felt like his ego was bruised. So he sent Spanish troops here, to which they landed in St. Augustine. And then they were going to go up the coast to Jacksonville, which is, maybe 50, 60 miles from here, which really is pretty close in some ways, but back then it was still enough of a distance. It would be like the distance between Atlanta and Orlando. Think of something like that. Now, one of the things that I thought was, I wouldn't call it ironic, but it kind of is ironic, is that during a hurricane, or a tropical storm, nobody knows exactly which it was, that the Spanish general and the French general both had the same idea. Let me attack in the storm when everybody's hunkered down, and maybe I can win. Well, the thing is when the Spanish got to the fort up in Jacksonville, nobody was there, and because the French decided to try and do it, but in the storm they got shipwrecked. And as the rumors came that they had gotten shipwrecked, and that's what happened to the French colony there. The Spanish general went through, and he would go up when he found these refugees, or these people these Frenchies that had been stranded. He gave them the choice to either become Catholic or suffer execution. Most of the French soldiers refused to convert to Catholicism, with the exception of a few. And so, for about 3 days, the Bay of St. Augustine was drenched in blood because of all of the massacre that happened. And that's the name of the river. It's like La Metzina or something like that. It's Spanish for the massacre. And before that, the natives used to name it. It's something like it was something to do with like the where the dolphins are. So the dolphins actually come into the bay there, and there's been plenty of people that tell me that the dolphins will come in and you can actually do dolphin watching there. And so the natives, before it was named the massacre, they called it the dolphin something or other. So guys, if you're ever in St. Augustine Beach, take the trolley tour. It will be well worth the money. And not only that, just the history, the military history, the religious history, the cultural history. I mean, for just a moment, you have 500 years of history frozen in time and preserved, so that the average person can come by and see it. Now, the reason why I actually decided to do this tour, other than just, you know, it was something that was really, really interesting to me, and I knew that if I didn't do it, I would regret it, because it's like, why am I working so hard if I don't actually get to enjoy anything? And so between that and a conversation I had with Bridget, where she was telling me that because members of FIGU know what's going on and stuff like that, that they are traveling the world to see the things that may be destroyed in the next world war and the next major cataclysm that we have as a planet. And so, you know, maybe this might be an idea for you as well. Before SHTF happens, if there are some places that you want to go and some things that you want to see before they get destroyed, now is the time. You may have 3 years or less, you may have a year or less. We don't know exactly how long we have. You may have 5 to 10 years. But what is definitely inevitable is before your life ends, we will have one of multiple great cataclysms. If it's not a nuclear world war, it is going to be volcanoes that erupt and cover the earth for like 2 years, and we lack sunlight, and it kind of sends us into like a mini ice age. Or we also have apophysis that could hit, and when it comes through, if I remember what I read correctly, it's going to hit in the English Channel, like the northern part of the English Channel, and it's going to devastate and engulf Europe in fire, and then that's going to cause the globe again to actually to be covered, and you know, all the things, all the history that has been accumulated, it may go away. It may be destroyed from one cataclysm or another. So make sure and take a moment and really truly enjoy the history and the beauty around you, because it may not last very much longer. And with that, guys, hey, if you like the video, please like, subscribe, share. I have my tip jar down in the description. Plus, I also get commission off of the gear if you purchase anything through my affiliate links. This is how I support my channel. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you in the next video.